You're listening to Two Beers Until Phronesis, a philosophy podcast for students, graduates, and anyone else interested in ideas. Alongside regular guests and friends, we discuss some of life's big questions over a few beers. Enjoy. Okay, we're talking about drinking. When did you guys start drinking? I mean, not today, but like in general, because we've already started drinking.
So the first time I was drunk was probably 15. I say I didn't start like regularly drinking until probably 17, I would say. You were there the first time that I found out that I couldn't regularly drink as much. So
oh yeah, was that the picture I sent you the other day? Yeah.
So that was my first experience of my body has a limit.
Yeah, that was a picture of Joe that's sort of looking down at what you'd produced, looking rather ashamed with yourself.
It's like when a mother looks down at her newborn. except in the complete opposite way possible.
Yeah, okay.
Naked and covered in shit.
Basically.
Yeah.
What about you, Nye? When did you start?
What do you mean by drinking, like recreationally going out with people?
Medicinally.
Medicinally. What do you mean, like that first time you like had a bit of, a glass of wine at Sunday lunch or whatever?
Well, yeah, but I had like half a cider or whatever from a very early age. Like my parents tried to introduce me to alcohol or whatever. Like when I was, as soon as I could ask for it, I would say like, oh, can I try a little bit of that? And they give me a sip.
As soon as he could speak.
Vodka. Yeah, no.
Give us a point of view on it.
No, but like I would have like half a shandy or something at the age of like 12.
Yeah.
And if we went out to a restaurant at like 15, I'd have like half a lager. But I really didn't like the idea of drinking for quite a while. I think it was that whole loss of control thing. I probably didn't drink till I was 18, like partying and stuff. And it would just be ciders and stuff. So yeah, I guess
there's also like a gateway element to it with alcoholic drinks, where like obviously when you're younger and you have a bitter, it just tastes really bitter.
Tastes like shit.
Yeah, and as you get older, you sort of, I don't know, your taste buds mature and you become less sort of sensitive to the bitterness, or you have like a particular drink, maybe like a really nice beer one day, and it just really hits the spot, and from that on you're just like, I get it.
I think it is to do with getting older and taste buds changing, but I do believe that you just have to drink beer and hate it for a while, and then one day you're like, oh, I actually quite like this.
Or you could just go straight to like ready to drinks, like hooch, and then you don't have to really have that problem. When you're a teenager and someone gives you like a WKD or a VK, alcohol pops, they're basically designed for that.
Alcohol is designed to taste as little as alcohol as possible whilst having the highest alcohol content you can get away with those constraints.
But I do think the best tastes are acquired. Cheese and wine and stuff. Like it's all the best tastes are difficult to get into. Ale isn't like something that I liked as a teenager, but now it's like the best thing ever. No, but it is like a very nice sort of taste. I prefer the right kind of ale to any sort of alcohol pop or anything really sweet.
How did you get into ale?
That's a good question. I don't actually know. Do you know what? I do actually agree with you, Joe, a little bit here, because I had to drink it for a while without liking it. But the reason I did is because I have this very romantic notion of the pub. Samuel Pepys said it's the heart of England or something completely overblown like that. But yeah, I generally have that really romantic notion of the old pub, the place where the community gather.
That's true. I think I have the same kind of thing with whiskey. Like similarly, I don't think anyone has their first whiskey and thinks, yeah, that's nice. They think that's fucking horrible and it's burning my throat. But like at the same time, I have this notion of like it's a very refined thing to do.
Yeah, we had a mate, didn't we? You'd have like the £50 bottles. And
absolutely.
We used to say we liked it. But then after you do it like 5 times, like, no, I do like it actually.
You start to appreciate it more and more.
You have a few you hate it, and then before you know it, you're having loads.
Alcohol is technically addictive as well, but in like a different way to smoking. So my understanding is that smoking, you can get addicted to it actually quite fast. Whereas alcohol is only really an addictive issue if you become like an alcoholic and then you try and come off it. Because that's one of the few things where withdrawal can actually kill you. I think it's like that. Heroin,
just the detox is too aggressive.
Just the detox.
You like lacks vitamins and stuff, like doctors give you pills for it because your body won't produce it because it's got it from alcohol or something like that.
Yeah, it's interesting. We should ask you, Elliot, like when did you start drinking?
When did I start drinking? I hated it for so long. It was disgusting. Everything tasted like shit. I was like, why do people do this? drank a bottle of vodka, threw it all up, felt like shit, didn't drink for a year, and then started going out, throw up every time I went out. Don't know why I did it, to be honest. It got so horrible.
Do you think it was like social pressure? Like,
I think it's one of those things, isn't it? It's sort of everyone gets to a certain age where you don't hang out with someone by going to like a park and playing football and all that sort of shit. You go to a pub and have a pint, and then from there end up going to a nightclub and just drinking endless amounts of things because that's what you think you do, and then dying on a sofa for 2 hours, you know. But then, eventually you do acquire it, because I used to not be able to drink at all. It was like the worst thing. But now I do actually really enjoy it. But that sounds horrible.
It would be weird if you didn't like it, though, because you work in a bar.
I know, yeah.
So
yeah, and I sort of fell into that originally by one of my mates had a job glass collecting, and they needed someone else. And then from there, just ended up going through the ranks of everything. And it's sort of being in the atmosphere of it does help.
It's a drug that we're all kind of, it's mandatory to take it.
Tradition almost, isn't it?
Yeah.
Everyone's drunk for so many years that it's what you do when you get to a certain age.
Because I try to take a very objective view of this kind of thing, and especially social pressures and things. But even I have a somewhat critical view of people that don't drink at all.
That's interesting. Do you want to elaborate?
Yeah, why is that?
People that are completely cold turkey. I don't know. I think there's a spectrum of people that drink. So you have people that don't drink at all. You have people that have the odd glass of wine and don't really go beyond that. And then you have this sweet spot in the middle. And I think controlled drinking is a very good thing to do. I think it's kind of like a safety valve for stress and things. Because I don't think it's realistic to expect people to be without any kinds of anxieties and stresses and things. Everyone needs a drink once in a while, and it's a nice thing to do. It's not this biggie, but in moderation. I probably fall on the other side of this sweet spot. I probably do have more of a reliance on it than I would like to admit. But then I think that you have your people who are very reliant on it, and then you have your people that are alcoholics,
Chemically reliant on it.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I feel like this middle bit, it's like balancing virtues and vices.
I mean, to counter that a bit, do you not think that there are perhaps more wholesome alternatives to for stress relief than necessarily going out and drinking? Why does going out and drinking have to be the source of stress relief specifically?
It doesn't. Like I said, I think there are better ways to do it, but we're only human.
Do you think it's just because of the culture and everything? It's more ingrained social thing.
But I don't think it's necessarily a bad way to relieve stress if you do it in moderation and you're very informed about what you're doing.
You're not binge drinking, basically.
I think having a few ales in an old pub, there's no harm in it. And I suppose what I'm trying to get at is you're kind of playing around with the idea of control, and I think you to give up a slight sense of inhibition shows you're comfortable with doing that. And I think,
do you also think that, I mean, I'm guessing when you're talking about the sweet spot, you're not talking about, are you including, say, being suspicious of people who have religious reasons not to drink or medical reasons not to drink, or are they not part of this diagram?
Medical less so.
Are they excused from that?
Medical less so.
I'm suspicious of them.
No, I am slightly suspicious of not really, but it's a joke, really.
Well, when you say suspicious, like, would you not have to examine the reason they're not drinking? Because
I find it really interesting. Like, I don't. Yeah, I'm joking. Like, I don't think they're like up to something. No. It's just I do find it very strange that they feel like any loss of inhibition would be a completely bad thing. It's like they don't sort of trust themselves.
If that's the reason, I'd kind of be inclined to agree.
I mean, my only experience with this is a friend of mine who didn't drink at all, completely teetotal. I think he listened to this podcast, and I think he knows I'm suspicious of
why he doesn't want to lose control.
Yeah, exactly. And we talked about it at length because we went to the pub a lot, and it would just be him watching me drink.
Do you not think perhaps that's maybe over-analysis? Do you not think there may be other reasons why they're a bit afraid of... I mean, some people are just kind of naturally worse drinkers. I mean, I don't personally think that if you drink a lot and say you're a bit of a prick or become violent or whatever, that necessarily reflects on who you are as a person. Because I mean, your inhibition centers, when they get shut down, they are as much part of your personality and part of how you conduct yourself as anything else is. So when people say, well, you know, when you're drunk, that's when you truly are yourself, you're really yourself, is a bit, you know, I personally think that's a bit of a misnomer in the sense that it's when you're affecting your brain that way, it's just silly to say that it's just like a true self or something, because you are affecting so many different systems that it's
I agree.
It's kind of strange.
I think because alcohol releases inhibitions and it sort of breaks down this kind of social barriers that you construct in your own mind, you're obviously going to speak more freely and you are going to be more yourself to a point. I think like if you get like really, really drunk, that can start to you can just start to make no sense because it just starts frying your brain effectively.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's not that
with a pinch of salt.
it's not that you can't imagine what the risks are of a certain action. It's that you don't care about the risks. I think is the fundamental difference. A lot of people kind of mistake that with when people get drunk. They're fully aware they can competently tell you the risks of a certain decision. They just don't care about the consequences anymore. So that's obviously a big reason for why it can boost confidence. And
more so, it's like they can't even cognitively conceive of the consequences. So suddenly that skyscraper you want to climb becomes a really good idea because the consequences are not like conceivable in some sense. And I think for
at a very extreme level, yeah. But I say if it's public speaking, for instance. So you, I do this, to be honest. So you have a couple of beers before you go up and make a big speech.
We're doing that right now.
Well, yeah, exactly. I think you can still cognitively be, I could get it wrong. I could say the wrong thing. I could completely, but you no longer care about doing that. I think at the very extreme end, you can't conceive of the risk, the downfall. But I think generally, if you're in that sweet spot, you're more likely to succeed, I think.
Yeah, no, I'd agree. I think definitely the alcohol level, or the amount of drunkenness does influence exactly where you are on the spectrum of like, are you just completely out of control, or are you just being a less inhibited version of yourself?
I'm unbeatable at pool after a couple of pints. But it is a couple. 2 more and I'm just nah.
What's that Mitchell and Webb sketch?
Yeah, it's like
is it 2/3 of a pint? Well, no, it's a pint and a half or something.
Slightly less than 2 drinks.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. If you finish your second pint, it's all downhill from there. But you're invincible up until that point.
Yeah, that's purely based in reality. You don't write that sketch from pure fiction.
That's why they stopped him drinking in snooker matches, didn't they? They're only like water now.
I mean, is that actually like a genuine reason? They just thought, well,
no, but
they're so like stingy with rules and everything in the snooker tournaments, aren't they? I don't know if it's like because they're generally like, well, we don't want any of the players being overconfident.
There could be, they could put anything. It could be like, oh, we've got a beer, but it could also not be a beer. It could be performance enhancing drinks or whatever. Somehow, our sciences
for Paul.
But I'd think they do it because people react differently to alcohol. But if they're both on water, then there's no handicap. Or
I suppose it's a bit strange. So if you think about it, like if someone wants to handicap themselves, you can kind of think, let be. But obviously, snooker people are like, I can't remember what they're called, the body of people who organise snooker stuff. I just know that they're famously really strict over everything.
Yeah.
Like I remember, is Ronnie O'Sullivan, I think is his name, like one of the more sort of well-known. I don't know if you follow Paul. I don't really, but I just like know.
I know that guy. I know that guy.
That's not Paul. It's snooker. Yes, you're right. See, there you go. I don't know anything. I'm thinking about snooker.
Yes,
but yeah, in snooker, like I think at one point he like removed his shoes or something in a tournament, and he got like so much shit from it. He got like a massive fine and everything for just like taking his shoes off for a while because they were irritating his feet. They're like, you cannot remove your shoes during a game of snooker. Like it was,
quite like Ronnie O'Sullivan. He's a bit of a rebel.
Yeah,
they offered like a 10 grand cash prize or something if he could do a 147. He was like, I could do it, but it's not enough.
Yeah,
I'm a water lad.
Yeah, and you got like in real big trouble for this. But 147 is like it's basically like a perfect game where you just like pot all of them in one. Yeah, and essentially he had the final ball to pot, and then he went. This is considered extremely scandalous and cheeky in snooker. And he went to the referee and he went, what's the prize for doing the 147? And he told him, and he just went, that's not enough, and didn't do it, and just deliberately did it. And this was considered like one of the greatest scandals in snooker history.
Well, I was talking about the my romanticization of the pub. Am I alone in this? Does everyone else kind of like pubs?
They're
No, I
nice.
agree.
Yeah.
They are like, especially you find like a really nice, quirky little country pub. You sit in and they've just got all sorts of random drinks and the food's always really nice.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, when you go to a restaurant, it's like super hustle and bustle. But if you go to like a quiet country pub, it's the food's sometimes better and, you know, it's nice and quiet and you can actually, it's a lot more relaxed. Almost like sitting in a lounge, you know, when you're at home in like a really comfy lounge with a fire on.
Yeah.
It's always nicer than when you're sat in an office or something.
I that's a large part of the reason why I like pubs. But even if they're not relaxing, if they're pretty busy, I mean, I can't remember the last time I was in an actual traditional pub that was busy. Not since like 2007 with like the smoking ban. For me, pubs represent part of history, and I'm not a very nationalistic kind of person, but I do kind of like that part of cultural identity that we have, the English pub. What else have we got? Like maypoles, fucking
Maypoles and
It
Morris
certainly
dancers,
is a big
right?
part of the national identity. Like British drinking culture is, I would go as far as say unparalleled around the globe. Like, I mean, you go to any other country in Europe, and they typically serve like half pints. That's kind of like the standard.
lightweights.
Yeah, but then they're all smoking. Like, and like, there's not really smoking bans in a lot of those places, and the smoking culture, for want of a better phrase, is like very prevalent in those countries. But you come to the UK, and it's like, it's just the amount of drinking's.
Yeah.
The phrase "going out for a drink" means something very different in the UK than if you were to say it, I don't know, in the US, for example. That would probably be interpreted as a literal, like, beer or whatever they fucking drink. I don't know.
Well, I mean, it almost might have like more depressive qualities to go out for a drink for no reason. Whereas in the UK, it's like if you're going out for a drink, you're like, I'm going to go see my mates, I'm going to play some darts, I'm going to go hang out with.
It's the go-to kind of thing, isn't it? When you're like get to an age where you're allowed into pubs and things, and you want something to do in the evening, it's like, let's go to the pub.
Yeah, well, back in the
It's kind of
day,
just what you do.
you know, you'd have skittle teams, you'd have darts teams, all these. You know, the community would revolve around these places.
To risk pulling out some statistics on pubs.
Here we go.
So one of the reasons why drinking culture is so prevalent, or at least going down to the pub and all that sort of thing in the UK, I mean, for one, is the sheer number of pubs that we at least used to have, and a lot of them are sort of disappearing or becoming gastro pubs, as they're called, or you know, restaurant / pubs or whatever.
Well, I read it was one every 12 hours closes,
Oh wow!
but that's
It's insane when you think about it.
how much was that a year? We worked it out, didn't we?
Yeah, it's like
Can't be
$7.20 a year.
Yeah. But I mean,
it might because I mean, a 1577 census, to bring out some numbers, there was one pub for every 187 people in England and Wales. That is a lot of pubs per capita.
Well, you couldn't fit them all in at the same time, and I'd say that's a problem. There need more pubs.
yeah. Let's have a look. So what was the other thing I wanted to say? I don't remember, but it doesn't matter because one of the big reasons why there's a huge number of pubs now is back in 1830. There was an 1830 Act which basically meant that people could just sell alcohol basically out of their house. It was what was called a beer house, because there was so much demand for people to like go and drink beer and whatever. They just went, oh hell, you can, you know, if you can get a really, really easy license, you can just sell it as if you're a pub from your house. And this was called a beer house, and these were like very informal sort of places. And some of them ended up becoming much more like pubs in the sense they would actually start getting tables, and they would make very lucrative businesses out of it. But the amount of inflation in terms of the number of pubs was just insane during this period, because everyone was opening a pub. This is actually one of the reasons why now many modern pubs are like just terraced houses in the middle of streets and things in marketplaces, because many of them used to be beer houses. And when the Beer House Act was repealed, because there was just so many of them popping up, basically they went, oh, hang on, we're going to restrict this, but you can still sort of apply for a license to become a proper pub. And many of the beer houses transitioned into becoming a proper pub because they had sort of really set up a business like that. But that did reduce the number of pubs that were being opened. There was still a huge number of pubs from that whole sort of expansion thing. That can definitely be responsible, partly why the UK has so many pubs open.
it's harder to find a pub older than sort of 17th, 18th century. Have you ever been to that really, really old one in Nottingham? It's supposed to be the oldest pub in Britain. It's basically a cave.
I'm guessing you have.
Yeah, it's a cave.
What's it called?
Ye Old Trip to Jerusalem.
No, I think I'd remember that.
All right, it's a cave basically built into the side of a castle where the fortifications.
How old is that pub then?
14th century, 13th century, sort of. Yeah,
Has it always been a pub?
May even be older actually. Yeah, it's
Really?
pretty much always been a pub.
Surely it would have been
That's
like a
like-
Traveller's Inn or something, like a
Well,
ale house or something
yeah,
like that.
this is the problem. It's like
Yeah, what is a pub?
yeah, it's a pub the same as like an old coaching station or a tavern or whatever.
I would say, for simplicity's sake, yes.
Yeah.
If it was a place where people gathered and had drinks, it's basically the modern pub.
So we call a lot of places pubs now, but they're different. They're more in line with bars. It's like,
Right.
so I think I've mentioned this before. The whole decline in pubs thing. A lot of people like blame the smoking ban or the fact that people don't want to go out anymore. I kind of think it might be a good thing, because I think it's also to do with better standards. And I don't think there's a place for like a dodgy pub, doesn't clean their lines and doesn't really. I don't know. I do like the idea of going to a pub and earning your way in there. I like to have some sort of familiarity with, know someone that works there or know one of the regulars, or should feel like it's part of you as much as, you know what I mean? To have sort of a way into that community, because it's more than just a place to go to drink. Bars are different, but I think with a pub, I like to have some sense of, but I feel like that has to be earned. I feel like you have to go into a place and these people that sort of look at you funny when you walk into a pub, I don't really mind that because I look pretty funny.
It's like when you first started trying to drink beer, you hated it. When you first start going to a pubs, no one wants you there.
Yeah.
And eventually, everyone acquires everyone.
You become a geezer.
And here we go.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it really is sort of their place, these regulars. And I don't necessarily mind that, so long as you're not made to feel unwelcome.
Do you hear about one of the pubs around, I think it was the Beehive or something? The landlord barred all of the regulars.
Why?
Just a bunch of old farts. And they were scaring off all the new people. So apparently, he just went, sorry guys, you're not allowed in anymore, because they were being dickheads and sort of claiming the pub, like proper locals only sort of thing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, see, that can be a problem.
And it's picked up like massively since then.
Was he trying to diversify in the sense that,
he was trying to, get new people in, because eventually you're going to have like 90-year-olds in there and nobody else. But you want to, if you want your pub to run, you need new people coming through.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think I imagine they were a bit pissed off. They're like, but we've been coming here for years. No, I don't care.
Yeah,
I don't like you anymore.
There's definitely a balance with these things. But I feel like a lot of pubs that won't adapt at all, on the other hand, are just, that's
It's economical insanity these days, unfortunately, because the age of people who drink a lot is older and older. I mean, not only that, but I think 20% of students are completely teetotal now.
It is really big,
and it's increasing.
So, like one of the person that works with me is teetotal, and he works in a bar.
Yeah,
and he's like, I don't drink. I was like, surely not.
Yeah, I remember.
Oh, it's 25% actually. I just got this. I just looked. Yeah, it's 25%.
Yeah, like
teetotal, like complete. So
yeah. But that's a census, so it's read into that
surprising.
how much.
I'm trying to think
accurate
of like
that
my
is,
friendship group at uni, but I guess like maybe those people kind of group together and you just
birds of a feather.
People who probably hang out. It's going to be a lot of like people on computers playing video games all day, probably like me when I was at uni. So
it's interesting though, because there was I'm going to try and quote a BBC article that I saw ages ago and probably get all the numbers wrong, but I'm going to do it anyway. I think it was something like the average, so this is like UK nationwide average spend on a night out has gone up to £70, something like that, but it's a lot like fewer times over the year that people go out. Obviously London's going to tip that quite a bit, right? But it's going to seem to be suggesting like a trend towards people are kind of not going out and getting smashed all the time, but like when they are, they're like making the most of it. So
in the sense of like less frequent but more like bingey,
more like so the £70 figure, I should stress, included like food and
drinks, taxis,
and taxis,
right?
And stuff.
Okay, so that's
so
not
it's
like
more
just pure alcohol.
Getting in on the door.
Right. So it's not necessarily binging, but it's more making the most of your evening, but you're doing it kind of less often.
Mm-hmm.
Whether that's a reflection of the fact that there's less places to go, or people are feeling the pinch on their wallets more, I'm not sure.
I used to work in a nightclub in town, and that makes loads of sense because pay week on Saturday would be twice as busy as any other day throughout the month.
Yeah.
So you'd get, maybe people don't have enough money to do it because drinks are obviously, the prices always go up. But pay week, Saturday night, was guaranteed to be horrendous. And it's just the way, it's like race week. All the Irish that come over will save up all year to come over. And it's like the only thing they do.
When there's like a race on with all the horses going around things, and
and it's
everyone piles.
You sound like an expert on this.
It's insanity though, because even police and fire services allow for a 10% overcapacity or something. Don't know if I should say that, but it's like a legit thing where they let you get away with being too busy.
I know they do that in venues for music as well.
Yeah.
There's obviously there's a capacity limit on certain venues.
Yeah, but they do it.
There's a bit of a
They don't care because they know it brings in so much trade.
Yeah.
Well, I think I mentioned in the sport podcast, not the pub I work at, but the other one was one of the football games, one of the big ones. And all the fans got off the bus and they were like climbing on the balconies and like throwing shit down. And yeah, it's absolutely mental.
Big events will get people drinking.
I don't know. I think it's better to drink little and often than that. You know what I mean? Like to blow all your shit in one go. And because if you're spending £70, you're going to get smashed. You know what I mean?
Most likely.
Shots.
I mean, if you were going out in like Soho or somewhere, £70 is probably just like
of
course.
Yeah, in London.
But so part of the article is that total spend is down like over time, which suggested that people are grouping into these kind of, they're just, looking forward to one particular night, maybe of the month or every 2 weeks rather than going out like.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. Like the people that go out every weekend and it's like a routine. It's like drilled into their brain, I'm going to go to these 2 pubs, maybe even just the one pub and just piss all my money up the wall. It's very sort of Pavlovian, isn't it? Just let's do the thing we always do.
Yeah.
Routines are fine, but you've got to break that routine sometimes.
I mean, well, each to their own, but I get bored of that pretty fast. If I was doing the same shit, like go to the same 2 places every weekend.
If my recreation becomes routine, it's like, you know what I mean? It's recreation shouldn't really be routine.
If you guys had to guess which age group is least likely to drink, as in drink like regularly or a lot.
Is it the under 5s?
Boomers.
I should say we're talking 16 and older here. Legal drinking age over. Who do you think are least likely to drink?
Least likely to.
Yeah.
See, it's because I work at the uni. I know a lot of students don't drink anymore. Granted, they still do, but they'll drink in their rooms maybe. They don't come to pubs as much. But the teetotal figure of young people, it's like you kind of want to say young people.
Yeah, if that's a quarter, sure. Yeah.
It is happening a lot less. If you go out to a bar in town, everyone's sort of over 20s easily. Most of them are like higher end of that. Yeah. So it's got to be sort of 16 to.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct.
18,
It's 16 to 24 is the smallest amount of drinking. And also the other big myth that I've always found really interesting, if some people don't know this, is in terms of economic class as well, the people who are far more likely to drink are people earning 40k or above a year. So it's in the sort of higher economic class. They're far more likely to binge drink and also far more likely to drink very regularly. Whereas people in earning 10k or less are actually far less likely to drink much.
Can't afford it.
Yeah, exactly. It's a lot of it is, just like that sort of drinking culture thing. Yeah, I think it's 80% of people earning 40k plus drink regularly, whereas 47% earning under 10k drink. With also,
Yeah, what have you been doing to these beers?
I walked them in a bag, sorry.
No, I was just rudely interrupted by like the eruption of the Carlsberg.
To be fair, I had finished the interesting part of that. Do you want another statistic?
Yeah, go on,
so just drop one. This might not make the edit, but the national average of teetotals in the UK now is about 20%. That's the national average. So there's about a fifth of all people in the UK now.
That does surprise me.
Yeah.
So in a place like London, I think the pub trade has been hit because of multiculturalism, because a lot of religious people don't drink, and there's a lot more religious people living there than have been historically in a lot of different religions that prohibit alcohol. I think that's probably a factor. It just seems very strange that a lot of students don't drink. Kind of makes me wonder why.
I think
don't like the taste. They haven't acquired it.
Yeah.
They're still waiting.
It seems it's almost like a rite of passage.
2 beers behind.
It's not exactly a good thing, and I largely avoided it. I think at some point we all have to sort of be in a field face down, chundering.
My actual first Freshers Week was, I'd say, relatively tame. Like there wasn't a night that I got blackout drunk. But then like you meet particular people, some of which I'm still very good friends with, and sort of depending on their disposition towards drinking, that can like really affect. And it's the social factor again. Like I've got a mate I'm still very good friends with from uni, and we just encourage each other, and it's so bad. Like you just look at each other and it's like, yeah, let's go for a pint, and then it's never one pint, it's always like many pints. But it's definitely a thing. Like, I think the kind of friendship groups that you fall in with, a few different encounters, a few different flaps of the butterfly's wing, or whatever that analogy is. And
Yeah, when I said I didn't go to Freshers, I wish I had. It's a learning curve, and even if I had like got too drunk or spent too much money, you learn from it, and you meet more people. I mean, there's a reason why people drink when they meet people. I mean, you wouldn't exactly sit and chat with somebody for more than 2 hours without alcohol in like a cafe.
You see, this is the interesting thing. It's like, because I had quite a different experience. I wonder if this has something to do with it. But a lot of the time I spent at uni playing video games. Like, especially my first year, I was just literally just played games like all day. I just sat on my computer all day, like wasting my life away. But what I ended up doing was I actually met a lot of people just like playing games and online and whatever. And that ended up actually becoming a bit of a social community, just like people on Mumble or Discord or whatever the hell I was on at that time. And you just like have this little community of people, and you're all just like playing games and whatever and stuff like that. And that actually ended up becoming that sort of social existence for me, more so than going out and drinking. And I do wonder if more and more people are just kind of like staying in their rooms and like playing games. Or
you meet people on the internet now, don't you? You don't go to the pub for a pint. You go on social media and search for people that you like, rather than sitting and chatting to them and finding out.
And I wouldn't say it's better. It's like
it's just a new way, isn't it?
I think you get much more wholesome friends from going to like societies or whatever. I still make like good friendships, and I've ended up like going to events and things with these guys, well, a lot of these guys, and it's just you become real life friends and all that sort of thing. But for a lot of it, you don't have that actual like physical contact with people, which does make a big difference, I think.
Yeah, I'm not sure if this kind of relates, but I think there's an older idea of the way people would kind of have dialogue with each other and talk through ideas. I think the pub was a place where that would be done. And I think now that that's done predominantly on the internet, and people aren't so open about having conversations about big ideas and, politics and news in the pub, or if they are, it's kind of antiquated and it's older people doing it. I feel like people are less cautious with the kinds of opinions they create and the way that they express them. I feel like on the internet, a lot of people are very, I think we touched on this in the conspiracy theory podcast, but it's like people are, all too quick to judge and stuff. But I think when you have that interaction face to face, and you meet different kinds of people down the pub, it's not necessarily people like you. You meet a wider range of people.
It goes broadly under this word called de-individualization, which is the word you use when essentially your individual identity or your identity as a person is not present when you're interacting with people. And like I said, with the internet and with places like this, people become de-individualized because what they're doing is they're interacting anonymously. So there's less of that human element. There's less of that interaction where you're actually confronting another human being and telling them they're an idiot or whatever other thing people do on the internet. Because unless it's your actual identity that's in on the line, there's very little incentive to really structure your thoughts or try to. It's often what motivates you to react to things or have the choice to respond to like a tweet or a YouTube video, whatever it is. Will often be anger or some kind of like extreme reaction to it. That's often where you're going to get the people on the edge of the bell curve who are the most aggressive, the most likely to respond, and that's where you get these like weird amounts of strange response or like over aggressive or whatever responses. And also, I don't know, I haven't listened to your conspiracy theory podcast, it hasn't come out yet, but I assume that's also where you get a lot of the conspiracy theory communities. It's like when you have areas of social populations where you can accommodate extreme parts of the bell curve, they will tend to flood together, won't they? But and so suddenly it looks overrepresented because you've got this overrepresentation of a certain niche group.
Yeah, we did mention about the whole echo chamber thing.
Yeah, and the loudest voices come to the fore.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing about echo chambers is, especially with like filter bubbles. I was doing a bit of research into filter bubbles as a thing, and it's very unclear whether they actually exist or not. And this is still very much. So I'm bringing this up because I don't know if you mentioned on the podcast. So if you brought up filter bubbles, or whether
it's a follow up to a podcast that hasn't even come out.
Yeah, so
bonus content.
But I do want to sort of mention that is actually quite a contested thing, but it's difficult because a lot of the more modern research, especially I looked at some meta-analyses for filter bubble research and things like this, and a lot of the original conception of where filter bubbles came from. I think it's called Elliot or something. He did like a TED talk and that sort of thing, and he just went, "Well, look, Google does this."
No,
And then-
that's about 3 times now. You've only hit me in the face. Fuck.
The gesticulations are just getting too extreme.
extreme.
Twatting microphones this way, Connor that way.
Christ.
Yeah, who knows?
I knew I shouldn't have sat next to you. Okay.
You got Nye like wound up and spitting fire. Just all stand back.
Oh, shit. What are we talking about? Let's get back on topic.
How often do you guys drink? Like, it's a regular thing, isn't it, for all of us? I'd say. I think you drink the least out of all of us now.
Yeah. I only drink when I see you guys, and even then it's not that often when I see you guys. One, because I'm driving into a place, so I have to drive back. So that's one reason why I don't drink. And but
5 and drive, mate.
And 2, because I don't actually like it that much. Like I like a mild amount of drinking. I do enjoy that, but after a while it becomes one, a bit of a financial burden, and 2, it's just I don't have that many necessarily chances to do it. And even if I did, I wouldn't want to make it a really regular thing. I want it to be an occasional thing, a bit like you were saying, Joe, with more people doing like very occasional, making it more special. That's kind of what I'm inclined to do.
Yeah, I generally won't have many unless it's more of an occasion. I don't drink on my own, and I don't really. It's more like I'll have one after work.
Didn't you add up the amount of like beers and things you have after work? You are like technically an alcoholic, right?
Yes, I am aware.
But in number of units you consume per week, because of obviously the social thing of like after work, you know.
But it is generally just one. It's one after work at like 3 a.m. You know, all I'm going to do straight after that is just go and sleep. You know, I'm not using it to function in that sense. Where it gets probably, well, more worrying is like when I do the open mic, I'll probably have 3 before I go on, because I, you know, and the podcasting as well. I do usually drink in the podcast, not all of them, but some of them I'll have a couple during, and it's just more and more of these social occasions where they all kind of pile up. Like I said, I think perfect drinking, if there is such a thing, where it deviates away from reliance and more into recreation. But it's very difficult to tell when you're relying.
Do you not think that just in and of itself, the amount of volume or the amount of alcohol you're consuming in and of itself can still be a problem?
I feel like this is
for medical reasons.
This is an intervention.
Yeah.
Yes. I totally agree.
Yeah.
And I
Do you think even
said,
if the context is right, even if it's a social context, a wholesome context, still if it's still too much, you
so that sweet spot I was talking about. I think sure, it's a principled sort of it's almost an existential look at the way you're approaching social situations, affirming yourself and trying to solve anxieties without needing to medicate them, and trying to get to the root of the problem. It's all about intention. It's all about why you're drinking and how you're managing anxieties and things. But then of course it is also about the amount as well. It's just quantitatively, sorry. And I think perfect drinking is also sparse throughout the week. A glass of wine with one of your lunches, and then a couple of drinks on the weekend, sort of thing. Yeah.
Well, see, the thing is, I think that actually drinking too regularly is also quite damaging, even if it's not that much. The problem is, like, if you're not giving your liver or whatever else a bit of like space, like a reasonable amount of space, like a week or so, to like just clean things out, to have a bit of a thing, then in a way, I think drinking over time, say so having like a beer every other day or whatever, is more of a compounding problem than say having, binge drinking is really bad. So if you're having a huge amount, but I mean, like in terms of say leaving maybe a gap of a week or two and then having like, a reasonable amount of alcohol in a week.
Yeah.
It's probably better than having like constant alcohol.
Yeah. So I don't really get, the thing the most I have is about 6. Like I've gone on the days where I would have like 20. Christ. I can't remember the last time I was like properly drunk. I don't enjoy that aspect, but I do enjoy tasting different ales. Or I do agree with it. I'm in a very difficult space, being working in a bar, being around a drink. Like I said, it's the only drug that's sort of
get sucked into it. Don't you?
Yeah, it's mandatory to take it. It's
a lot of the people that do just hang out in pubs, so you're sort of to see them. You're more than likely be in a pub.
It doesn't help when you sell a £1 a shot.
Yeah,
That's you.
It's funny because like there's this argument that if alcohol was just hypothetically not a thing, and like right now, today, it was introduced to society by discovery or whatever, it would never be legalized. And you can sort of see why, because
It's the worst drug, yeah.
there's so much evidence for it being, well, it is unhealthy ultimately. Like, okay, in moderation, maybe not, but anything, the amount most people drink is bad for you, like full stop. Like it's something that people don't want to confront.
Yeah.
But
There's
as opposed to not
580,000 dependent drinkers in the UK alone who are
Right.
actually reliant on it. You know, that's something. That's what, like 1.4% or something of the total. It's like 70 million people in the UK or something. So it's like, you know, around 1% of people are actually reliant on alcohol.
It's scary. I mean, it is quite a potent drug, really. Like, you know, anyone who's been drunk will know, like, that's severely affecting you, like psychologically and physically as well. Like it's impairing your mental state a lot. You know, there are things like, I don't know, like codeine, for example. That doesn't do anything near to your mind what alcohol will do. But that's like prescription only. That's all locked down. But because alcohol's so, like, I don't know if that's a great comparison, but my point is that
It's culturally
because alcohol is so embedded in the culture, and it's frankly making the government a lot of money, like it's not something that's going to be switched off.
Well, there are pretty much every other drug has uses medicinally, and you know, certain things
Or might have uses that we haven't discovered yet because they're so taboo to research.
But there are drugs that can, you know, treat PTSD. Alcohol can't do anything like that. It does. It's got no positive qualities. It's just fucking it's just shit.
It's literally a depressant, isn't it? If you have to categorize it scientifically, it's in the same category as like heroin.
I mean, one of the issues of the idea of even trying. I mean, we can look at the one example we have of a Western nation that created a prohibition on alcohol. If we look at the US, there was a prohibition on alcohol between 1920 and 1933, which was when obviously the UK federally banned it because of there was a big Protestant influence in the prohibition of alcohol, and it ended up becoming, as many people sort of know, like a very underground sort of crime oriented. Well, it was the mobs basically ended up making a huge amount of money off of speakeasies and places where you'd go secretly to consume alcohol. And so it ended up getting repealed. One reason because it was it didn't really make a difference because people would still go consume alcohol. It's just all it did was fund, you know.
It was more that something that people were more or less enjoying responsibly on the whole was taken away. It's like it's puritanical. It's people saying we know what's best for you, and that obviously drove otherwise compliant, normal, kind citizens to crime. And the destruction seen in the Prohibition was akin to the Civil War. It was an awful period of American history when you really think about the statistics of the crime being committed.
Yeah. Although, interestingly enough, liver cirrhosis went down by quite
I'm sure
a bit.
it did.
So
I'm sure it did. Yeah. So I guess my point there is banning it is not the answer, because alcohol is all about control and about taking responsibility for your actions and about willfully giving up control to invite a little bit of chaos, which I think, like I said, if you're in the sweet spot, I think, and you are a very in control person, I think that can be a nice little exercise to invite, a nice little, just to relax. I'm on about like 5 drinks or less in the right setting, not like, I'm gonna fucking piss all my money at the wall, go and get a kebab after 18 Jaeger bombs. So that's,
I feel like you're talking about my life, man.
do you think that there's any practical means of trying to reduce the amount of binge drinking or dangerous alcohol consumption in the sense of not only health, but also the problem that it creates, the burden it creates for the NHS? Or do you think it's just something that has to happen culturally in the sense that we have to get to a place where we're all more sensible drinkers so that we sort of self-regulate to an extent?
Self-regulation and temperance are virtues that need to come through agency. It's not the role of the state to tell you to be more responsible with your own body and decisions. I feel so. The latter, yeah. I even take issue with things like seatbelt laws. If it's just you in the car, it's just very weird that the state's going, look, don't die.
Well, what I would say is to play the other side of the coin a bit is, well, when it's at such minimal cost to the person having to put the seatbelt on, as in it's like you literally just pull a thing across your body and just, that's fine, you just sit there in the car. And what that actually does from a macro perspective, though, is it helps reduce the number of accidents that happen on the road, which can not only involve yourself. If you're in a car accident, you could be killing someone else.
I'm not disputing the figures, yeah.
as well. But it's
Yeah, but you can't kill yourself by not wearing a
I
seatbelt.
guess,
Yeah.
I guess you're not going to fly through the window. And
It's a choice. Yeah, like Superman. Just
exactly. Yeah,
fly through the windshield.
The minute
and
I
take
said that,
someone
it's
out.
like, hang on, that's actually not going to you're not becoming a human missile, isn't necessarily going to.
It might have happened.
Yeah,
I'm sure it did.
That one death could have been prevented, but I mean, it's like when it's like almost like a cost benefit analysis, isn't it? Do you think that maybe?
No, I think it's the principle. I'm not disputing the facts. I think it is the principle. It's not the role of the state. Like making suicide illegal. It's just like, well, that's not the role of the state here, because that suicide ultimately, I mean, it does affect other people.
Well,
besides,
it is illegal, is it not?
yeah, it is, and that's why
I see. What you mean.
it's utterly bizarre to me that it is illegal. It assisted dying and things. This is the person taking responsibility for their own actions and safety, and that shouldn't need the state. Really,
That's a whole other thing though, because if you throw yourself in front of a train, very difficult subject we're getting into now, but I'd say that's going to affect other people one way or another.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
When you look at voluntary euthanasia, that's kind of personally, I think that's basically fine to do, because
I think there are very few
it's
viable arguments against it.
Yeah, and it's not apart from upsetting your loved ones, perhaps, if you have a viable reason to do so, it's usually terminal illness or chronic pain or whatever, it's kind of fine.
Yeah, so as long as there are safeguards in place, so to make sure that there's a team of doctors that preside over the case in question, lawyers as well, and family and friends, and that they all decide whether it is actually informed agency that is behind the decision, so that they're aware of the risks. And also, I think it's important to rule out all the alternatives first as well. But so long as those criteria are met, it's on the person.
But did you not think, well, I mean, this is not even to do with assisted dying, but this moving sort of more into purely suicide. If you think about it in terms of, say, it's kind of a non-law, right? Because you can't, convict someone for killing themselves because they're dead. So you have this weird thing where it's almost like a weird sort of disincentive thing, or something that kind of goes, yeah, you really shouldn't do it, because if you jump into a train,
you'll die a criminal.
Because or you'll massively inconvenience a lot of people if you do a public suicide or something that's quite, it might create public unrest in the sense. Maybe that's the traditional reason, but
I'm pretty sure that's covered by other laws and things. And again, common sense. Not everything needs to be taken to legality straight away.
Right, but I mean, it's kind of almost, maybe it's a non-law anyway. It's just more that what we worry about is more the assisted dying laws and things like this, which we need serious attention.
It'd be very weird if the police burst down a door, see a guy hanging from a noose, and shoot him to stop him from
immediately get the handcuffs out.
I'd put money on that's happened in America before. I would not be at all surprised if they tried to stop someone committing suicide by
only if he's very zealous and he thinks that suicide is a sin, which it is,
or he's a suicide bomber and then trying to stop
that's
him.
Different. Yeah,
that's different. Yeah.
So yeah, I don't believe it's the role of the state to mummy us, because just by doing that, it kind of, I don't know, it just lends all this stuff to populism and the idea that we're too stupid to regulate our lives, which may be largely true, but then address the source of the problem. You're sticking a band-aid over a leak. Then it's like you're not really doing the job, and there's also the principle. It's not really what the state is for. The state does protect us from ourselves, but by our consent, and it just seems very weird that the state is now it sort of exceeds its mandate by doing that. It's like it thinks it knows what's best. It's like, but the state is a reflection of the people. Ideally,
I mean, well,
that's supposed to be.
That's the libertarian argument perfectly articulated. But I suppose, one of the counterpoints to that, and often people who are sort of less further down the libertarian spectrum will say, well, surely there's sort of these grey areas where it's more regulation in certain places. First, they are strictly prohibition. So it's at first they're strictly, let's restrict this certain access to this or whatever else, and then over time it actually becomes public. It becomes something that the public actually agrees with, and it becomes something that is actually generally accepted as this kind of.
Yeah, I'm not blanket against these kinds of laws, but that's just my initial feeling.
Where it comes to intervention into prohibition.
At least that should be the benchmark of how politics operates. That should be the ideal. That here's the principle that we're acting on. I was going to ask, so this kind of leads us into why do people drink in the first place? Okay, so, I mean, why do you drink, Joe?
Why do I drink?
Yeah.
That's a good question. Probably one I should have asked myself some years ago.
Yeah.
No, I think a large part of it is social. For me at uni, at least, it was obviously a way to kind of break down that sort of awkwardness, those kind of social barriers, and get to meet people, I suppose.
Yeah, it makes things a little bit more fluid, sure.
Right.
Yeah.
So, social lubricant. Is the phrase
That's what I was going for. I was like,
That's the
shit,
phrase.
is something lube? What is it?
Yeah, I didn't want to just like try and say something that had the word lubricant in and just say something completely
Yeah.
fucking weird.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what I was meant to say. I think my reasons for drinking have probably changed like over the years. I think like a lot of it was kind of to do with getting rid of stress. Like when you're at uni, it's quite a stressful time because, believe it or not, when you do a degree, you have to do work sometimes. So I found. So it's kind of a flip side to that.
Allegedly, yeah.
And because you're young and your body can kind of take it, you're just like, and it is sort of the culture, right? You've got an SU, you've got happy hour. It's almost encouraged in a sort of implicit way.
Mm.
Whereas now, like, I never drink in the week, really ever. It is ultimately, it comes down simply to just like, it does feel good.
Yeah,
Like, it's a good feeling. It feels good to be able to chat a bit more freely. You know, everything just feels nice. Simple as that, really. The problem inherently with drinking is that as you drink more, you sort of lose sense of where you're at.
yeah.
Like you can't work out how drunk you are, and then you have to think, well, I've got to kind of catch up a little bit, have a bit more.
Yeah, well,
Before we know it,
it's
too
very
much.
difficult to get moderation. That's part of the reason why I think it's actually quite a admirable task.
It's a
Because
skill, mate.
when you find someone that can drink perfectly, they don't come along very often, but you know they can just be like, they know when to say no, they know when to catch up. They'll always leave at a sensible time. If anything stupid ever happens, they're never involved with it because they're always in the right place at the right time. People who can navigate the drinking world, they're just like, you're a showcase of the virtue of temperance. That's one of the reasons why I have this like sweet spot idea. Even though I'll be the first to admit I don't go into it myself. That's my ideal anyway.
No, I
Rather
like the
than just
idea.
going cold turkey and just being like, it's like some weird religious side. That's a massive over exaggeration anyway. But I feel like some people who don't drink have that in mind.
Original sin.
Yeah.
No, I think for me, like I do like have an addictive personality, I think, to some extent.
I think you definitely do.
Yeah. I think it's fair to say that I don't drink as heavily anymore than I used to. Like I don't really get blackout drunk.
But you're also like really safe hands when you do get really drunk.
Yeah.
If you don't go mental or anything, you just like really
But that's the
chill
thing,
out.
I'll be the first to admit that like
Yeah.
I often just don't really I do know when to stop, but I don't necessarily care when I get to that point.
Yeah.
I'm always dancing on the edge of like, I know I shouldn't have another one, but I'm just going to because I'm having a good time and I don't really want the night to end. I like to think it's never got to a really problematic stage, but I definitely used to be a heavy drinker. Like there's no doubt about that. And I think like my personality is quite, I just kind of want to always push it to the next level a bit, and I don't necessarily realise might not be appropriate.
Yeah.
But I like to think I've calmed down a bit now. But yeah, to give you your kind of long-winded answer to your question about like why do I drink, I think it does ultimately for me a lot of times come down to it just does feel good.
Yeah.
And it's just a feel-good thing to do.
I think I had some like generic prepared stuff, and I think you just hit the nail on the head on all of it. The only thing I that you probably didn't mention it, I think there's a sense of like adventure in drinking. A lot of people that are bored drink a lot. They're bored with life because
it's an escapism thing.
yeah,
all the time.
because it's sort of edgy, isn't it? We sort of go, oh, he's kind of cool. He takes risks. It's this sense of adventure because it is like a little adventure going on a night out. I went out with you, didn't I, the other night, Elliot? And like that was the first time I've been that place in years. And I don't normally go to clubs or anything because I get beer fear now when I drink properly badly. If you don't know what beer fear is, it's just like horrible gripping anxiety. Especially when I go to sleep that night and wake up the next morning. The next morning, hangovers now are just like characterized by beer fear. It's dreadful. No, this place was really cool. And it is just like a little adventure because I was kind of going to this place and meeting this person I haven't seen in a while. And just drop into this place. There he is, the guy in the corner. Different people just appearing out of different stages of life. Like, old uni friend, old work friend. Yeah, it's just like a little fucking Lord of the Rings quest, but really sad.
So is that sort of encapsulated why you drink as well, Connor? Is that
No, I don't.
That's your question. Or?
Well, I like to think at least that I do have other ways of filling that gap, that need for adventure.
Is it more in line with what Joe's answer in the sense of how he drinks for the social reason and that sort of thing? Or?
Yeah, well, obviously there's this romanticisation of the pub, all the language that goes with it as well. I like being in a pub and hearing people say, like, hey, one for yourself. When a glass gets smashed, everyone goes, way. You know, there's usually a dog, there's usually someone on the fruity. I'm not really painting a good picture here. But, you know, all the sort of the language and the, you know, the time at the bar kind of thing. I like that. Problem with the saying about the open mics, anxiety, I think, is a large part of it. Forming coherent fucking sentences as well. I feel like I do it better.
It steadies your hand.
Yeah, it does. Only for the first two, like the Mitchell and Webb thing. After that, it's probably just me thinking that I'm speaking a lot more
just
clearer.
Additional brain delay with each successive beer.
Because I think part of it is attention deficit disorder, but a part of it is also psychosomatic. A lot of like, my terrible cadence when I'm speaking, and a lot of confidence issues. So I think just having that one beer takes away a lot of those psychosomatic barriers that are there. So it actually has the opposite effect of what alcohol should do, really. It should slow your cognition, but it actually speeds mine up for the first two. Then it goes...
Do you not think that maybe just your perception of your cognition becomes more smooth?
Well,
Suddenly you become the greatest orator of all time when you're 2 beers in.
No, that's certainly true after a lot, but I think after a couple, there is an actual improvement, and it's the kind of thing... you're not going to answer, Sam?
Shall I answer him on the podcast then?
Yeah, get him on the...
Hello, Sam. You are currently on the 2 Beers Until Phronesis podcast.
Oh, yeah.
All right, what
it's
is
like
it?
One of those really good quiz shows where you win a Christmas hamper part.
Yeah. So what are you calling for?
Why is his name Sam Pedagogue Lusted?
Because he's a pedagogue, he's a teacher,
I
isn't
was seeing when we were going there, I don't know if you guys were getting there for 7 or if we were just like getting there for 8:30 and meeting there.
he? Yeah, what are we doing, Connor?
What time is it?
It is 25 past 6.
I tried texting Connor Bevan's fucking communication expert, but I got completely aired.
Yeah, sorry, we're in a podcast right now. That's why we're all not like.
It's like one of those fucking stasis spheres, like time and space stops. It's like we're in a pot. It's like a wormhole.
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, when are we leaving for the Christmas meal?
Oh, in a bit. Just come in.
Yeah, just come to his house and we'll.
Oh yeah, don't worry, that's fine. If we're leaving in a bit, that's cool.
Elliot, how do you want to die? Is it doing this podcast?
No, I'm getting messages off the staff at work, so I can't find the PA. I'm just like, can you leave me alone? I'm doing a podcast. Make me want a beer.
Yeah, quickly, Elliot, to wrap up. Why do you drink?
Why do I drink? Well, I've worked in like the pub trade since I was 17. So like even before I was actually even allowed to drink, I was sort of working in a nightclub with like 50-year-old dickheads just running about and being gillies. And it was just sort of what people did on the weekend. I don't know. And, you know, eventually, like, because I skate and BMX and all that stuff, so I'll go to a skate park. So I've almost got that other place I can go to. But a lot of people now go to the pub, and it's where you hang out with people. You know, like after school, you go to a park and sit and do sweet fuck all for hours on end.
Yeah,
and it's kind of the same in a pub.
Maybe you need to open a pub that has a skate park in.
I know, mate. Could you imagine?
Yeah.
But, you know, it's just one of those things. You go and it's something to do, something to sort of take your mind off life in general, I guess.
Yeah,
You know,
escapism kind of thing.
Both a half pipe and a real pipe serving beer.
Yeah.
Cheers, everyone. Have a drink with
Cheers.
us, but not too many.
Strictly 2 beers.
One beer.
2 beers
Yes.
until phronesis. Okay, we're on.
Oh, wait.
Yeah,
Jim.
we're
Ooh.
recording live to the nation.
Hope it's not live. No.
BBC Radio shit.
That's a funny joke.